Good afternoon. My name is Kemp and I'm Managing Editor of Byte at Creativebrief, and it's my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's instalment of our Creativebrief Explores series. We have a brilliant example of creativity in the midst of a crisis today, with a brand and agency that have really stepped up to support the community they serve right now. So nightlife has been hugely impacted by coronavirus. Let's face it, not many of us have any nightlife right now, and we're all missing that a lot. But lockdown has placed an incredible economic and emotional strain on the industry and the individuals within it. From drag queens to mixologists, DJs to musicians, artists and performers across the world are seeing their livelihoods under threat as a result of lockdown. In the face of this massive challenge, Jägermeister and Engine teamed up to launch Save the Night, a global initiative to support the nightlife community and nightlife fans when they really need it most. So to find out more about this brilliant brand pivot, I'm delighted to be joined by Daisy Domenghini, Client Managing Director at Engine Creative, and Tim Jerg, Head of Global Brand Management and Digital Marketing at Jägermeister. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well done for saying our names correctly.
Thank you. Lockdown skills. And I love that Tim is joining us from Berlin, which is great. I love the way that we can all get together virtually, which is kind of really on point considering this project. And I just really wanted to kick off because it's the perennial thing we always talk about, you know, don't go dark in the midst of a crisis. But the reality is that a lot of brands, you know, when things go wrong, when you can't access products, you can't go to pubs and bars and nightlife, you know, a lot of brands have gone into shutdown to some degree. So could you just tell us a bit about the campaign, why you decided to do it and why you decided to make this pivot rather than to go dark? And Tim, is it okay if I kick off with you?
Yes, of course. So first of all, when the crisis hit us, we were in crisis mode as everybody else as well. And as we are already an integral part of nightlife culture, and nightlife is a matter of heart to us. So we thought like, oh my God, what is happening now to all these clubs, but also to all these creatives who basically make the nightlife to what it is. And so it was a very initial reaction from us to say we need to help. And there was a big, like everybody in the company, it was so fast, like getting all these calls from everybody, talking to everybody, and also an agency side, of course. And it was obvious that we want to do something and we need to do something, whatever we can, to make the situation less traumatic for those individuals. And that was the starting point. And yeah, after kind of like a few calls with Daisy and team and everybody, we had some great ideas. And also in the company, like my colleagues, they come up with really great initiatives and ideas. And yeah, finally we said like, hey, come on, let's find something that connects it all together, which was then basically became the Save the Night initiative.
Thank you. And Daisy, could you tell us a bit about the creative idea? And I mean, the speed of this campaign is incredible, like in how much you built over such a short space of time. Could you share a bit about the process?
Yeah, of course. And I think sort of as Tim said, I think it was just having open dialogue very quickly on this topic just allowed us to kind of move at speed. And I think the key thing was once we'd established what that umbrella kind of proposition was, the world becomes easier because you know then what ideas work and what ideas don't work, because you know exactly what kind of your guard stick or your measure stick is for, is that the right thing for us to be doing as an organization? And I think very quickly we had like loads of ideas and we were watching pretty much to see what the world was doing. And we saw lots of brands and lots of actually individuals were starting to do things like master classes. There was a lot of move to kind of do a sort of quick fundraising pack. So then we saw the Brewdog's hand sanitizer. So it seemed to be there was like themes coming through that brands were doing and reacting to. But one of the big things for us is whilst we had a big sort of network of artists that Jägermeister work with, which is brilliant that they've been building up and working with for the last few years, So we had them to think about and how we could support them. We also had the people who were kind of stuck at home, and the consumers are a large part of our business. And without the consumers, actually, we wouldn't be anything. And actually finding something that worked as well for those kind of what we call meisters, those people, those creative artists, and as well for the people at home was really kind of key. And the guys came up with this idea of drop-ins. And it was a really simple premise at its heart. And I think sometimes the most simple ideas are often the best ones because they're easy to get people to kind of behind them. Tim's smiling because he's going, seems simple on paper, but not always that simple to execute at speed. But I think very quickly it was like, well, there's no point just having words on a page. The simplest way to make people see how simple it is to actually build a prototype. And I think within 24 hours, our tech team came up with a prototype, which meant that Tim was armed with something he could take to his colleagues and show them how simple this was. And then when you explained it to your friends and colleagues, they started to go, yeah, that's exactly it. And the idea was simply, people are now communicating through Zoom, through Skype, through House Party. How do we bring the entertainment to them at home whilst they're locked down? And it was as simple as that. And I think it just put a slightly new spin on it because it made it personal to those individuals. It wasn't them having to come on at a certain time. They could choose the time they wanted to do it, choose their friends so they're not with a bunch of strangers. So still keep that very personal nightlife experience going.
And getting that prototype done in 24 hours, I mean, that's no mean feat. I mean, could you tell us a bit about your creative process in lockdown? Because we're definitely, and I know there's irony because we're on Zoom and I'm talking about Zoom fatigue and I'm talking about how difficult it can be to get sign off and approval processes, particularly, you've rolled this out across so many different markets, like getting so much buy-in so quickly. And being, I suppose with you guys being in Berlin and you guys being in London, you've always been able to communicate remotely, but tell us a bit about the creative process.
Yeah, so I think, as you quite rightly pointed out, I think one of the things that helps us probably is we weren't Zoom natives. We've been using Zoom since sort of the beginning of our relationship, that started a couple of years ago. And so, because we do have those colleagues in the US, UK, Czech Republic that we have to make sure we're talking to regularly. And so I think that instantly meant that it was just easy. It didn't feel unnatural for us to be having creative presentations on, online. Ideally, for something as important as Save a Night, you would probably, in usual terms, be flying out and we'd be having big discussions around the table. But at the same point, what that did is it allows us to be much more collaborative. So we have sort of online tools. We use all the kind of Google SharePoints, all of those kind of things that allow us to collaborate at speed. I think that was one of the key things here, is how do we collaborate at speed? So I think being used to those platforms was a really good starting point. I think the creative process, like always, we knew that the world was changing and moving quickly. None of us knew how long we're going to be in lockdown, and what lockdown meant was very different at different parts around the world. So we kind of almost couldn't rest on our laurels because we had to kind of move. We had to have a response, which actually I think made us more pointed and quicker to work together. So whereas usually you probably have weeks of kind of creative ideation, then you'd have, feedback rounds, we were all having to get those key stakeholders together much quicker. And I think when time is there and the importance of time, and there's some sort of time limit on it, or, it actually focuses the mind and it can help bring people together to kind of all work towards that common good, which I think has worked really well. So I'd say that was a big learning for me. And I think it was just the creative process probably wasn't your traditional one. It was literally everyone knows what the situation is. Here's the big idea. Here's the brief. Go and we've got the creatives just within 24 hours, 48 hours going, 10 ideas, 15 ideas, let's go. Let's pull out the best ones, then iterate on it and then keep going.
It's really interesting. And Tim, from your perspective, getting buy-in across the company is super fast. How did that work? I mean, were there parts of this campaign where you think, there seems to be a lot of transparency across companies at the moment because we're all grappling with this crisis, which in some ways is making everyone more open-minded in the way that they work and how quickly they move to approve things. What learnings did you have from it?
There were quite many, but I fully agree with you. Like people are really open-minded in such situations and available. Just technically, they're not traveling or sitting in meetings, which really helped. But from my point of view, which was the crucial point, is that what we did is fully on purpose, and everybody buys in immediately, because it's not really new to those who work for Jägermeister. What we do here, we just do it like there's a new context to it, of course, and the program is different to what we would have done or did in the past, but it was not that we were jumping on a train and saying like, oh wow, there's a new topic and let's do it. It felt very authentic to Jägermeister and to what we usually do. And then of course it was there was a whole bunch of people in our Jägermeister team, in the headquarters, or now on remote, and in the countries, who talked a lot. So we had many Zoom calls, especially in the first days and weeks, and especially one of my colleagues, he did anything else than just talking to everybody and explaining again and again and again what it is. And there was such great resonance in the countries, from really different places all over the world, and they recognized there's such a strong need from their creative network they have in the countries already. So we shouldn't forget, those who partnered with us now are used to work with us, or were used to work with us in the past, and we basically, we just helped out. And on the other hand, on the same hand, we provided a platform where those creatives could perform. And I think if you are a creative, you need an audience, and it releases you and it liberates you if you can perform and get the stage. And I think that was so, everything was going hand in hand, kind of like having the platform, handing it out into the responsibility of the respective countries, and let them decide who the best meisters are from the network to work with on this certain drop-in program, or on the other ones we had, which were quite a few.
And
basically it was the purpose. Everybody was behind it.
Yeah, and I love that purpose, because there is always that kind of complaint around posturing in marketing and a lot of talk around brand purpose. But this campaign really sort of financially is supporting and also providing that creative oxygen that performers, they need. They live off that as well. And I mean, could you talk about why it was so important to support your community, because it's such an important part of your brand, and this is obviously your existing community of nightlife performers, really diverse range of people. What was the importance of that? Because I mean, the hospitality industry right now is really struggling, and also consumers are struggling. They want those moments of connection and the creative inspiration that those people provide.
As like in the very beginning, I think I said it was a matter of heart, and that's really it. We know those people, and it's we used to work with them, so there's a relationship, and the brand got big together with those people, and now it's definitely it was obvious it is the time where we should help and where we can help, and so we just did.
And Daisy, could you talk about your audience and your target audience? Because this is a great example of a campaign that's supporting a community, but also providing something to your audience that we're all sort of lacking right now in terms of nightlife in lockdown. I mean, could you tell us a bit about the target audience for the campaign?
Yeah, and I think so. Our target audience has always been those of legal drinking age, from 18 to 29, those guys who are really all about experiences and having those really best nights. And I think it's kind of what I mentioned earlier. I think what was so important here is making sure that we could recreate in that environment, but not give them something new to do or something that they weren't already doing, but build on the behaviors they already had and bring them that really interesting experience at home. And I think that's why it's resonated so much with that audience, is that it's not telling them to do something completely new that they're not already doing. It's building on that, and it's giving them a choice of experiences, from a mixology class at home, you know, go and raid your fridge, show me what you've got and I'll create something for you, versus, you know, here is a DJ, amazing. And sometimes these DJs, honestly, they're world class, and there have been people out there going, I can't believe I've had the opportunity to be there with this DJ, or have a masterclass, you know, with a Tiva, who's an amazing photographer, really well respected, just been part of the Beastie Boys movies in the US, you know. So there is some really high class talent there, and the fact that these people are being able to have that experience is something that, you know, we're giving them moments that they'll never forget. And that's what Best Nights has always been about. It's those moments of togetherness that you'll never be able to recreate again.
I think that's so interesting at a time when we're so experience deprived, or especially in marketing, when, you know, we've been talking about the experience economy and the growth of experiences for so long. And actually there's relatively few examples of brands that have really worked to actually create that experience in a different platform and in a different way. I mean, what are the learnings from a consumer perspective? Were there any particular experiences or elements of the campaign that you weren't expecting to really resonate that really took off?
Yeah, so I think one is, so I think for me, I think the fact it was based on those natural platforms, it worked really well, right? So I think learnings were just basic tech things were always the things that were the kind of stumbling blocks. So things like, none of us could have predicted that Zoom were updating all of their platforms so to have passwords before one weekend release. So making sure people are there to kind of deal with that and be a support network. So it's keeping on top of all of those latest updates and up to speed. I think for me, I think the success of the platform has been because it's based on those inherent behaviors and experiences. I think we're growing the platform. There's new initiatives coming out. We're listening. We're using data to work out what's working and what's not, and why it's working. So I think making sure you're utilizing the data throughout to optimize has been a really key learning for us. So working out, is it musicians? Is it DJs? What time of day people are booking, how far in advance people are booking, so that we can start to optimize and offer enough slots and encourage the Meisters to open up enough slots, because ultimately it's up to our Meisters to decide whether they're free or not to have these drop-ins. So I think part of that, for me, that's been a really key part there, is that they're in control, the consumer's in control, and just leave it completely up to them to almost manage. And then we're there as tech support in the background. Ultimately, we're giving them the platform.
And Tim, it's so interesting because the platform has obviously changed. The platform that your brand has performed on before has often been like face-to-face, or, you know, in a big concert. And there's lots of consumer experiences that we've taken for granted, maybe historically, that we probably won't take for granted in the future. What's been your kind of learnings from this process and your understanding of your community? I mean, what's been the kind of standout moment for you?
So there were two things basically. The first is to stay true to yourself, and then it feels automatically good what you do. And that was something I experienced here, as much as it doesn't often happen in such an intensity. And we gave away a lot, kind of like we trusted, and we gave put a lot confidence into our Meisters and in our audience, because actually nothing was staged. And meanwhile, we had more than 1,000 or more than 1,100 drop-ins and booked. None of them was staged in any way, and there was a lot of trust for us that we gave into the hands of our colleagues, and into the hands of our creatives, and of course, last but not least, to the audience, because they were the ones to experience it. And that is also something we're not really used to so much. And I have to say, great experience. It was just, there was only positive feedback. There was really not one negative voice anywhere.
And with that intensity in mind, like the intensity of the project, the scale, the speed, like, and this kind of culture of collaboration that you've clearly fostered as an agency and client partnership, I mean, what's been the learnings from that? Because, you know, intense working, you know, in the midst of a global pandemic, you know, the capacity for things to go wrong, for tempers to get frayed are pretty high. And you guys seem to have navigated this so well. Share how you did this so we can all learn from it.
I think it's open and honest conversations. I think there were things, you know, we've learned a hell of a lot from doing this at speed together. Like, we've learned so much about legal stuff we probably never even want to know, and we know what lawyers are like, and they speak in riddles. So I think the key thing was having regular contact. It's like open lines of communication. You know, there'd be moments when Tim and I would get on the phone and we'd each say our piece, but in the end, what was amazing is knowing that we could then get together, and we shared a virtual ice cold shot, right? So that was a real moment where it's like, whatever's been said along the way, however we've behaved, however we've worked, we've got here together, and we can talk honestly to each other. And that's basically as simple as it is. And I don't think that's different to any other way you should work with clients, or the clients should work with agencies. I think if you're ever holding things back, then you're never going to have a true relationship. So I think it's just always try and be as open and honest as possible, especially when working at speed.
And Tim, you mentioned trust, which is really sort of a key point of power, I suppose, in this campaign.
Sorry, I just didn't hear the first part of the question.
You mentioned trust when you were talking about, you know, this campaign, and trust being like a key element. What's your view about how, as an agency and brand relationship, you've kind of evolved throughout this campaign and process?
I think we focused heavily, which was really good. And there was as much transparency and collaboration and willingness to collaborate, not only in the agency or agency-client relationship, but also within the company, within the agency. I could recognize you could get anybody on the phone immediately. And I think in the very end, it's focus and a lot transparency. And yeah, it's a combination somehow between collaboration and being transparent. And you get so many good ideas. As long as you're focused, it will go in the right direction.
And with lockdown now easing, and I know we're all at different stages in different markets, and you know it's far from a smooth journey. How do you see this campaign evolving? Like, what's next for Save the Night?
Watch this space.
I can speak, but I can't say anything. Of course, we think about how do we continue, and I think even if lockdown is less extreme than it was before, and you can see like Berlin, London, great, really big differences, yet still nightlife is under pressure. Nightlife has been under pressure even before Corona. And like we had in Berlin, we had an initiative by the end of the year for 3 months. We rent out a place and gave it out to the creative community of the night to give them free space, because already there we saw nightlife is under pressure, and it has been, and it will be, I would guess, in the next couple of months and years, probably it will be more under pressure than ever before. And as said before, kind of like nightlife is a matter of heart to us and those who work there and those who do it. And the night opens up so much creativity and imagination, and we all love it. That's what we are there for. And so we will definitely think of how to further help and support nightlife and those who drive it.
And do you see this as as a sort of broader shift in marketing? Because this has been such a huge kind of tectonic shift in the way consumers experience their life. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about the shift from kind of celebrity endorsement to supporting a community. I mean, that's a huge shift in kind of the scope and the role of brands in the kind of environment. I mean, what's your view on that? Do you think that all the authenticity that we've talked about for so long in marketing is actually finally really becoming core to marketing moving forward?
Oh yes, definitely. I think it did in the past, and it just kind of like it got faster, and it's more, and the importance of it was rising. And I think it's a good time for those brands who have been authentic in the past and we're not just saying it.
And Daisy,
will be a shift in marketing for sure.
Daisy, what's your view on that shift? Because this is such a sort of the community campaign in the sort of truest sense of the word, because it's supporting the community as well.
I would agree with Tim completely, and I think actually, you know, for them, they've been in the lucky position that for years now they've been investing in that community, and they have lots of authentic voices within there, which means that, you know, it would be wrong and inauthentic for us to go all of a sudden work over here with this celebrity right now when we've got all of these people who need our support, who are already an authentic voice for us. And I think a lot of brands will have to look at their marketing spend, and because I think they'll also, at a crisis, there'll be a lot more questions asked about where money's being spent. So for instance, if you were an airline right now coming back and doing a celebrity endorsed campaign, there'd probably be quite a lot of questions about, you know, how can you be letting go all of these staff and then be spending money on a celebrity over here to raise awareness. So I think digging into your authentic networks and acting in an authentic way, that, again, as Tim said, based on your purpose and what's your core of your values, will be really, really important.
It's a really, really interesting shift for brands. And then looking back on this campaign, and also you've got to give us a tip of what we should do. Like if you have can you say who your favorite Meister is, or is there an experience that we should be trying, or is that putting you on the spot too much? But could you share the sort of biggest learning from this campaign, like looking back on this process, which is an incredibly short period of time, and what would be the sort of key takeaway that you would want to share with the industry?
Should I go first? So for me, I would say that it's work collaboratively, can't speak anymore, lockdown's ruined my voice, together. I think that is the key thing. I think involve as many people who you may not consider you need to be involved early on. So that's legal, anything global, any global initiative you need, and anything where you're paying people, whatever it is, competition rules, you need to make sure legal are involved and on that journey with you from the beginning and helping you to find that timeline as you go. And I say that is, and make sure your tech teams are involved early enough on to also be working alongside that legal team, because those are always the biggest stumbling blocks when working on a global piece of business. It will be the different rules and regulations and restrictions and jurisdictions from every single country. As long as you've got them involved early enough on the process, hopefully that will make the speed at which you're going work for you, because if they're not involved, they'll come in with a curveball later on. So I'd say that's a really key learning for me for the future, for everyone who works on any global piece of sort of quick turnaround initiatives.
Great practical advice, thank you. And Tim, what would be your takeaway?
It's a tough question. I would say start authentic, do what's true to yourself, to your brand, and often I think those who are with the brand for a while, they will automatically more or less know what the right thing is to do. So listen to yourself and listen to your team, and bring the best and biggest team around these initiatives, and they will make it happen. In the very end, this is a team effort. It's not enough to have a good idea. That's always great, but without the team, and in this special case, I really have to say, more than 20 markets, different markets, so different marketing organizations basically were working on that success and creating it. And I think this is to me the biggest learning, kind of like really take the time in the beginning to build that team, inform everybody, and take the time to talk to everybody, and really get them behind this initiative and help them, or at least kind of like in an ideal way, they make it their initiative. And this is what happened here. Like every country had its own initiative based on one platform. And I think that was so super strong. And that's my learning, is invest the time in the beginning to talk to everybody. And
I think you're right. I think that gave them a real sense of ownership. And I think we've also throughout this Tim's trusted us, you know, as an agency to build up those relationships as well with all the local markets. So they feel they can have those conversations and we're working for their best interest as well. And I think that's been really good because I know, and it's not a threat to any local relationship from a creative point of view. We're there to support Tim and the global team. So, and I think they see that and they know how to come and work with us, which I think has been really key as well.
And that's a good point. And in the very end, I would say it's because you were asking kind of like the relationship, and I would say it's like it's more a partnership than the typical agency-client relationship. So we know each other for quite a while, and also the teams know each other. So there is already a lot of trust, and that's how you keep things going, I think.
Exactly.
And that trust has obviously been incredibly powerful because you've drawn so many creators together, you've brought your consumers together, and you've brought the whole creative community together in such a powerful way. And I love the fact that you got such strong buy-in at the beginning. It's such a sort of core thing that's so often overlooked. And I love the fact at the beginning of this conversation, Tim, you were talking about how you had someone who was literally just telling everybody about what you were doing. And it's like such a great piece of insight. And thank you both so much for taking the time to talk about this campaign. This has been one of my absolute favorite lockdown campaigns. It's just brilliant. And we really appreciate you taking the time to sort of lift the lid off it, although I will be following up to find out who your favorite Meister is. We need those tips.
Not too many. Just try it out.
But I have to say, sometimes I use them on a Sunday for a little pick-me-up, so they've some good Bloody Mary tips. Those ones are good, the mixology on a Sunday.
Yeah, we need that in the Kemp household. My dad reading the Telegraph quiz aloud, the family quiz night, he's not cutting it.
No, definitely not. So there's some really great artists, and I encourage anyone to also try artists out from not their own country as well. So there's some amazing musicians and talent that you can that's the beauty of it being a global platform. You access these artists you wouldn't usually be able to. So it's really worth checking out.
We will definitely do that. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time. And thank you guys for tuning in. Please share your thoughts on this discussion using the hashtag CBExplores. And do tune in at the Creative Brief platform, where we will have the next in our long line of brilliant partnerships and brand pivots that are proving that creativity really can thrive in the midst of a crisis. So thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.